Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Lifeonaire Show. I'm your host, Jason Wojo. On the Lifeonaire Show, we help people make more, work less, and live better by creating lives and businesses they love. That was a mouthful, man. I think I just combined like 4 different taglines into one.
Yeah, and you kind of actually succeeded doing it.
I didn't even stutter. This is amazing. Dude,
yeah.
and well,
did you do your mouth exercises today? Go blah, 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 blah.
20 dwarves took turns doing handstands on the carpet. Yes. So, man, we got an awesome episode today. We got Mike Michalowicz back for the third time. This is a three-peat, bro. This is like he's the most common guest in the Lifeonaire Show.
I don't know. We're paying him well, I guess. He keeps coming back.
right. Yeah. All the fan mail that he's getting. He's like, all right, I'll come back on. Leave me alone.
All right. Well, I love Mike. I mean, because one of the things that he brings to this podcast and to the world is real world stuff. I mean, he does this every single day. Yeah. And if you look at his books, read his books, I mean, he said he's on the 8th book, I think, right now. Yeah. And every single one of these got so many gold nuggets, which this particular episode includes that as well, man.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, so here's a guy who has, and these are great books. Like, listen, if you haven't read his stuff, I want to encourage you. It's really solid material. It's not just fluff. They're great. They're excellent. He's my favorite business author. And so we talk about some awesome stuff on this episode. We ask him a bunch of questions based on his extensive experience in business and all these different aspects of business that he's familiar with. Like, what are some things we can do to make our business better? We talk about business growth. We talk about business vision. We talk about, I don't want to give it away, but we talk about adjusting things. Like, should you have a business plan?
Yep. Should you be doing your business with a partner, with a wife, with a husband?
Yep.
Those kinds of things.
We have a lot of good stuff in here, man.
Got some awesome answers. So
yeah,
being an overnight success.
Yeah.
You ever heard about that?
And when should you give up in your business and when should you keep going? And what is the role of if you love your business or not? Is that even important? Let's dive in right now, man. Here it is, our interview with Mike Michalowicz. Mike, what's up, man? Welcome to the Lifeonaire Show. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, it's good to see you again, brother. Hey, Peter.
You are the only three-peat we've ever had on. Yeah, man. Do a dance. The victory, right?
That's right.
Victory dance. Get it going.
Yes, it is. Man,
it has nothing to do. There is 3 Polacks on the line right now.
Polish, so baby. It's Polish
you can't,
cow.
Right. That's right. You can't get rid of it. Right. We're always going to be there. Well, hey, man, like, listen. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about today, and this is something that I think you are uniquely positioned to discuss, is because of your extensive history. And am I correct? You have 10 books out now. Is that right?
No, but approaching that, I think it's 8 books.
Okay. And each book, by the way, I've read about 3/4 of all your books, not all of them yet. And I know, and I will get to all of them, I promise.
Stop at 3/4. You don't finish the whole thing. Just stop at 3/4.
Yeah, I'm not done. No. I finished the books. I just didn't read all of them. One of the things that I thought I love about your books is it feels like you're in the mind of the business owner, and each of your books has a very specific topic that it addresses, and they are. And I don't want to say. And I don't think you wrote them in a sequential way, like, hey, here's the next thing. Although looking back at it, you probably could place them in an old. I kind of think of like your books as like the Star Wars series, like, hey, here's the
that's a good way of looking at it. I like that.
Yeah. And then let's go back and fill the gaps and make it. Yeah. And that's totally the way I look at it. But the question I have that I want to discuss on this podcast is like, you've identified all of these bottlenecks in businesses, all of these sore spots, these trigger points that people can get stuck. What have you learned through the creation of this process that you continually run into for people that have different challenges in businesses? Are you seeing the same things over and over again? Are people continually running into the same issues that you're like, man, like this is, by the way, I addressed this in this book over here, or like, what are the common things that people get stuck?
Yeah, there is probably a top 5 list. I don't know if it's 5, but there's definitely recurring issues. I think it's propagated by common beliefs that we're told this is the way you do it. And it's the opposite. So one example is many business owners believe that they have to have a business plan. They're like, no business plan, no business. And what I found is if you've written a business plan, and I have, many cases, they sit on the shelf for 5 or 6 years and just collects dust because the business morphs so quickly. So having a vision for the business is very important. having a rhythm where you're strategically adjusting the business and documenting your plans. But to have these long laid out plans are not smart. It's kind of like going to war. Like if you plan out the trajectory of a war for the next 5 years, chances are you're going to have a lot of miscues. So you got to have the vision of victory, but you got to battle each battle differently and learn dynamically. I think another one is, this is probably the most common, is that growth equals business success. And it's not, it's profitability. And so a lot of businesses that aren't profitable say, well, I'm not profitable because I'm not big enough yet. So I got to do more. I got to spend more. And these businesses get into more and more precarious positions. They get laden with debt. They're focusing on sales, but not the quality of the sale. And those businesses are in trouble. There's other things too, but I see them recurringly for sure. Yet one last part, every business owner feels they're unique. They're like, I'm the only one going through this. This is unique to me. No one gets me. And my sense is, yeah, actually everyone's been through this or is going through it, and we all get you.
Gotcha. So we could even stop right there, because both of those common misconceptions have enough meat in the bone to take up multiple podcast episodes. Talk to me about, like, so are you a proponent of like a 3, a 5, a 10-year plan for businesses, or do you think it's just too broad, like too much changes? And I'll just preface it with one statement. Like, I can't tell you the number, and you might be this way as well. Like, I've talked to so many business owners that had no idea they'd be where they are now because the business took. I'll give you an example. We just talked with a guy recently who came up with it's a brand called Swami's. They're UV blocking sunglasses, and he's got them into the hands of all these pro athletes, and these teams are sporting them now. And he's like, it was chance. Like I had an idea and it worked, and I ran with it, and now I'm totally not where I would expect it to be. Do you see that, or do you see a more deliberate trajectory as a more common scenario?
Yeah, I see that, but I think there's two components. I think we do have to have a vision for what we want the business to feel like, look like, how we think it's going to be of service, because without any of that, we're not going to know a direction to move in. But then I like to move in 90-day increments. I call it a tacking strategy. What this is we'll be meeting this. We're almost at the end of the quarter as we're recording this. We'll be meeting and we'll be talking about how we performed this last quarter and what do we need to improve and change for the next 90 days. I think it's very easy to digest and envision 90 days, and we can adjust to the dynamics around us. And for 90 days, we adjust again. So we have that X on the map where we're headed, but we tack, and tack is a sailing term where a sailboat does not go in a straight line to that island they're going to. They capture the momentum of the wind, the economy. They avoid barriers, competition, and they go for a short distance, and then they pull the sails into a new direction, and they capture the wind again, and they're zigzagging their way. They always get to their destination, but through this zigzag pattern. And I'll just give you a story example. I was talking with Brian Smith, this is a long time ago. He's the founder of UGG. He went out saying he's going to start a fashion business in Australia. He was going to go to the US, study kind of the fashion scene and bring back the fashion scene to Australia. And he was a surfer, so he was checking out surfing. So he goes to the Southern California, Pacific Ocean. And he notices that these people were coming in from doing their sets out in the waves, and their feet were freezing cold because neoprene had become more advanced. People were out in the water all the time now, but your feet are exposed to grip the board, your hands are exposed. So what he did is like, oh, we have a solution in Australia. It's these UGG boots. So his vision, his plan was, I'm going to bring fashion to Australia. He brought a warming boot to the US. And then the boots became popular. The surfers, I was thinking when you said about the pros wearing them, the semi-pros and pro surfers were wearing it, exploded. What was interesting is that was in the 70s. Fast forward to the 2000s, that's when it became a fashion statement. It became so cool with that niche that then every teenage girl wore it. So he actually did start a fashion business. That was his vision, not in the US, but in Australia, but he did it in the US, but it didn't play out the way he thought. It started off as something for surfers.
What a story that is. Peter has a collection of Uggs, by the way.
Oh, you're a big Ugg collector. I could see that, Peter. How many Uggs?
Hey. You know what? So listen, don't listen to him, what he says. Anyway, one of the questions that I have, it sounds to me like from the, what'd you say?
I said, I totally fell for it. I get to see a closet full of Uggs. They're bedazzled with a little jewelry on it.
Mike, you know Peter surprisingly and shockingly
well. Polish. That's the Polish. We all do that.
Okay. Are we done now?
We're done.
Are we get more? Let's get it out of your system. Come on.
Yeah, it's done.
No, so listen. So couple of things that I've gotten from this conversation that you're talking about, as far as like the overall business vision that we're talking about, is the point is, I think that you're trying to make is just figure out what the business is, like the values of it that you want to have and all that kind of stuff. And then the how, you just focus on those low increments and figuring out the how along the way.
Yeah, it starts revealing itself. There's no question about it.
Right.
And to me, the what, I love that you said like your values, what's important to you. I believe that our business is an expression of ourselves. Ultimate thing, it's a platform for expression. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It could be, that's the vehicle, but anything can express yourself. So I'll pick something, like toilet paper. Like, okay, that's a pretty boring commodity business. But if someone's really committed to environmental concerns, now you can put a spin on this. You make the toilet paper that's most biodegradable or safest for our environment. But if you have a different spin of something else that's valued to you, you can take that same business and morph it. I think we know we're in the right business when we feel extremely comfortable with our business, when we love our business. I know many entrepreneurs who have allowed their business to morph because they've adjusted to customer demand, but actually now hate their business. Like, I never thought I'd be doing this and I hate it. That's a problem. So that 10-year vision keeps us aligned. I believe pivoting is a cool concept, but pivoting without consideration of ourselves becomes a business that we can loathe. So we need to align, always adjust to customer demand, because otherwise you won't have a business, but always ensure that you're in alignment with what you desire for yourself.
And so it's that merger, it sounds like, of that, what your characteristics, your personality, the things you like, enjoy, and then taking those interests or those passions and then finding a monetary outlet for it through your business is really your key for success.
Yeah. And then you're unstoppable. If you do what you love to do, even when there's tough times, you're going to keep doing it because you love to do it, which makes someone unstoppable. It looks like we're going into a recession again, and it may be deep. We'll see. But what's so interesting about recession is like the fire through a forest, all the old dead wood starts burning up. There's a lot of people that go into industry, not because they love it, just because they see a quick monetary opportunity. But when a recession comes in, the people that stick with it generally are the ones who love what they're doing, and they fight through it and they keep pushing their business forward. And then you see this healthy growth afterwards. And I suspect we're going to see this in all industries again pretty soon. Well,
and I also can't help but thinking, like, if you love what you do, you're more likely to, I'll give you an example. Like, so Mike, you don't know this. I was trained as a scientist. I got my PhD from Duke, and I was going to be a lab rat, but I never loved it.
Nice.
and it just sounds cool.
I love everything about the ACC, so I'm a big fan already.
Yeah.
Well, I saw the Final Four. I was at the last game that Coach K coached. So
and he lost.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he lost. And the UNC fans were loving it, by the way. They were total dicks.
Yeah.
I want to say this for everybody listening to this podcast. Let's just be thankful that he didn't go become a scientist, because the world would not be a good place.
Right.
Peter guy's a little dig back. I love it.
But here's what I realized. Like, I was the guy who was on the lab bench doing, and I loved thinking about science, but then when I was done, I went home and I didn't want to think about experiments. I wasn't hypothesizing. But I realized that the guy who did, or the girl who did, I'd go into the lab because I had to, like, to do an experiment or change something at like 8 or 10 o'clock at night. And they're still in there and they're loving it and they're laboring over the lab bench. And that person was going to kick my butt all day long if I ever tried to compete with them. And so bringing that to business, if you're someone who loves what you do, I feel like you have a huge advantage over somebody who's really, what you were just mentioning, just doing it for the money.
It's a have to, want to, right? If you have to, you'll do the bare minimum. If you want to, you'll go to the maximum. I think of guitarists. I play guitar, but I muddle around and play 3 chords. But then you have someone like, Eddie Van Halen or something. Like, I was reading about his biography. He'd be playing for like 12 hours. Great. His fingers would be bleeding because he just loved it. What want translates to is the necessary hours for mastery. And this is true in our business too. If we want to do what we're doing, if we have a love for it, we will put in more hours over time than the people that do it because it's simply an opportunity, or I have to make money somehow. And you're going to achieve mastery where everyone else just achieves the bare minimum.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's a downside to that as well, though? Because I think of, like, when you love what you do, like, and by the way, same thing with guitar here, you can see over there, like, I love guitar. And if you love business, is it possible? And how do you pull yourself back when you love it so much that you're diving headfirst into it? It becomes everything for you. And you start to see the repercussions of that in your life. And you're like, gosh, I don't know what to do because I love my business and it's so much fun for me. It's rewarding. I get all these things out of it. But my wife or my husband is about to murder me because I haven't been home or I'm not present even when I'm there. Like, how do you navigate that when you really are so blessed to love what you do?
Yeah. The fact that you have a wife and husband is shocking. I had no idea. There you go. Peter, that was for you. Peter.
No, Mike drums.
Okay,
That's right.
okay.
Peter, that was for you. Yeah. So I remember I was on this TV show a while as like a guest expert every so often. And it was a business show. And there was this guy, is a husband and wife actually, that came in and they made a thing called a light glove. And what it was, this is 10, 15 years ago, glove for your hand that allowed you to do matrixy stuff on your computer. Like if you wanted to click, you would just do this. And if you wanted to move things around, you'd do that. And they loved it, but no one was buying it because apparently it was more than adequate. The computer technology really didn't support this. There was very few apps where kind of the matrix type of scenario would be of service, but they loved it. And I remember talking to them in the green room after the show. And I said, how's the business going? And they were pretty candid on the show that was not doing well. They're like, oh, we have so much debt. We're just looking to raise money just to survive. And I'm like, maybe it's time to give it up. And he looked at me. He's like, are you kidding me? We're on the verge of success. They've been on the verge of success for 10 years prior to that. No. So I think the only way to validate externally if it's successful is by demonstrated demand. And nothing speaks as loud as wallets. In fact, I say, don't trust words, trust their wallets. People might say, oh, I love your guitars. It's so great. You're so much fun to listen to. Love when you're jamming out. Okay, why don't you come to the little concert I'm putting on? It's $100 per ticket. Well, I got the kids' soccer game to go to. Okay, you don't love it that much. You're patting me in the back, but you're not willing to depart with money. And therefore, that's not sustainable. I think as long as we try to monetize what we're doing consistently and early on in the stages, we'll get the real truth. Now we have to listen to it. If people aren't buying, don't play it fake. Say, well, they just don't get me. They just don't get it. It's going to come one day. No, you got to get it monetized today. And if you can't, just the service and offering, it's a form of a pivot to make sure that people are buying now, but ensure that you still love what you're doing.
Got it. And how about, as it relates to like your family life, do you see a lot of couples that are in business together successfully, or does can the business become like, let's say the husband loves it and he's working really hard and the wife is like not super enthused.
Yeah.
And like, do you see those situations a lot? How do those play out? What do you recommend?
So funny. So I have a peer group I'm in, and it's all business owners. And literally this was our conversation yesterday because one of the business owners said, hey, my business has grown so much. My wife is coming in full time with me. And I saw there's 10 of us in the group. I saw 3 other business owners go, oh my God. And they started rolling their eyes. And so so at least in that context, it's a 1-to-3 ratio, like 1 success potentially to 3 failures. The ones who failed said, and the most common thing I heard is if you have a spouse in the business, you'll never stop talking about business. We talk about dinner, we talk about on vacation. We're always talking because that's our common bond. And it becomes a very narrow focus. What other entrepreneur says, when my spouse was not in my business, then I had something else to talk about. We expanded each other because I wasn't always business talk. So that was one risk. The second one, and to your point, was one of the business owners said, my spouse hated this work, but it was making money. I love this work. And they were always in conflict with me. How can you like this? And one was there for the money, one was there for the passion. And that was a conflict. But on the flip side, I've heard the other stories. I've heard people say, you know what? I love working with my spouse. We have so much fun. And what I found is they are able to delineate in those scenarios when work is done, work is done. There's no conversation about work. And maybe they put those bylaws in place before they got started. And I don't know how you would adhere to it. But I'll tell you one other factor, though, that was massive in successful spousal businesses was that the spouse agreed that one of the persons there were the exclusive final decision maker. So they came to agreement saying, when we're going to agree to disagree, at that point, one person has to make a decision and we're both agree to stick with it. And that seems to have been a very helpful tool to successfully navigate a spousal business partnership. If there's a final decision and I make the final decision, I still have to face that person every day and sleep in the same bed as that person. Like it's really sticky ground to me.
Right.
Weak ground or thin ice or something. It's kind of for.
So listen, I got a question for you. Did you have something, Virgil?
I was just going to say, well, to finish that thought is like, I see a lot of business owners want to bring their spouse in because they feel like they can trust them. And that is the determining factor versus like, maybe they're not really skilled for it. And maybe they want to enjoy a partnership, but they
that's
kind
a good
of force them
observation.
into it. You know what I mean? And they're not really the best fit for that. But go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a great observation and risky.
Yeah,
he does say something good once in a while.
He does. So. He's a doctor.
So, so listen, so I got a question for you because you've been around a lot, and been talking to a lot of business owners. You get asked a lot of questions. But I got a question for you. What question do you wish that you would be asked that you never get to ask?
Never get asked. I think the question I'd like to be asked more, or at least have a discussion around more, is how long it takes to be successful. I know we've all heard the phrase overnight success takes 10 or 20 years or whatever the phrase is, but something like that. But there is a bias that I have, that we all have, that we're on the verge of the breakthrough moments. Like I'm going to go big. And I think it jades us to sticking with the fundamentals. I think some people think that they're not far along enough yet. And they should be further along, and they start doing pot shots to grow their business. They skip some of the fundamentals. I think other people think they're on the verge and things are just going to come flowing, and you can drop the fundamentals. And that's what I fall victim to regularly, is that like, oh, finally I have arrived, or the business has arrived. I can take the foot off the throttle and start slowing down. I think we have much more of a fighter mentality. I think like boxing, every punch you throw is to achieve that knockout. It's to knock that guy out. And when he's weak, you got to hit actually harder. There is no pulling off the throttle. And a lot of people don't discuss that. So I wish they asked more about how long does it take to be an overnight success. I think for many of us, at least for me, I think it's going to be a lifetime.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a process, and it's interesting to me that you say that, because I think, sometimes we look for, hey, we're going to give this business, 3 months. And if I'm not making X amount of dollars, we're going to cut it. And that gets a little tricky to me to figure out, like, how do you know, you might've seen that schematic before, Mike, or the meme that shows the miner, and they're like a foot away from gold, and they've dug this huge tunnel with their pickaxe. Right. And they're right there. And I'm like, gosh, man, like, how do you know? Like, do you recommend, like, hey, here's your goal, but if you're not 50% by this date, like, do you believe in hard deadlines, or are those malleable? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, I do believe we have to have deadlines. I really do think that's effective, and hard deadlines too. If the business is struggling, to say this is the quit point. Yeah. But I think there needs to be metrics behind it. Like that guy digging toward the gold, and he's inches away and saying, I guess it's time to give up. Did he measure how far he's dug so far? Like they don't talk about that. And if he simply measured how far he dug, what's the probability or possibility with that much digging that you're near the gold reserve? And it'll give you another perspective. I think many business owners just say, well, if it's not working if I don't have X revenue by 6 months from now, I'm out. But the question is, we should also measure our client growth rate. How quickly are we acquiring clients? What's their spend? Like, we should measure the elements that indicate our progress. And I think that's a better hard deadline. If the progress isn't continuing, which will bring us to that tipping point of finding the gold, if the progress isn't continuing for the next 5 months, and we stagnated, or we see that's continuing to dwindle, that's going to be my hard stop. That's how I'd measure it.
Got it. Okay. Well, because you hear these people who are like, I'm so close, and they're refinancing their house.
Oh, I hate that. I hate
that. My heart breaks for these people who but then again, it seems like 1 in a million, you hear somebody who makes it happen. You're like, wow, like, well, maybe they,
Yeah, but that's a lot. 1 in a million's lottery. I think there's a real simple thing to say, and I've been doing this for myself a lot now, is simply prove it. Whatever we believe, prove it. I'm so close. Great. Prove it. Prove it through the data. What shows that you're so close, and what shows that you're not so close? Try to look at it from both perspectives, but look at it from a quantitative or a objective standpoint. In most cases, we're very subjective. Like, I feel I'm so close, and that's no indicator at all.
Got it, man. Well, hey, man, I know we're almost out of time. I have just one last thing I wanted to ask you about, and I'm assuming this comes from an inspiration that you want to help other people who have great ideas to share, like yourself. But you've recently started teaching people how to write books. Tell us about that.
Yeah, my saying is, we don't help launch books; we help launch authors, and I think a lot of people have a misperception of what the author journey's like. There's a lot of these book in a box type things, just hire a ghost and they'll write a book for you. And sadly, it's putting a stain on the industry of authorship. There's a lot of shitty books out there, and the world does not need more shitty books. The world needs more great books. And I think many people have a great idea that just needs to be codified and presented well. So I put together a group, we call it Next Level Author. And if you want to check it out, it's nextlevelauthor.com, where I talk about the journey of authorship, the marketing components, what is necessary to structure a book that transforms people. We talk about techniques like the from to, meaning where are you moving a reader from, where are they going to end up, and how are you going to see this journey throughout? What's going to keep them engaged every step of the way? And then how are you going to market it like it's a product? Because a book is like any other product. You got to market it and sell it. You have a lot of competition. So that's Next Level Author. And yeah, I just have a love for authorship, and I want to help elevate more great books out there.
That's amazing, man. I'm working on some stuff right now, and I jumped on one of your recent podcast. Well, it wasn't a podcast; it was a webinar or training, and it was amazing. And I'm looking forward to getting more involved with that stuff myself, man.
That's awesome, man. The world needs it. The world needs it.
And you've proven this is successful. You know how to do it. People should come to you and learn how to do it, man.
Oh, thank you, Jason.
Mike. It's been amazing. Thank you, my friend, for being on the show. And we'll look for number 4 sometime soon as well.
Yeah, you got an idea, Jason. It's a pleasure, Peter. Always a pleasure being with both you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. Let's talk about our biggest takeaways. Here's one I really liked. I loved his tacking analogy. And tacking, and basically, I don't know why I didn't think of this, man, because I'm not as smart as Mike. But when I learned how to sail sailboats, and by the way, funny story, I flipped a sailboat when on a catamaran. My brother and I flipped it in front of my house, and we got laughed at, and we had to turn it back over. And so clearly I didn't tack very well. And this concept of tacking, of going back and forth with market conditions, and kind of you're using and utilizing the situation you're in and the forces around you to catapult yourself moving forward. It's not a straight line to success, right? We've seen those diagrams where it's like up and down and up and down. Well, that's a perfect analogy for tacking.
Right. And that's what, I think it's really important, especially because think about it. Your business is not just this thing in a box. You're not living in a box here. You're dealing with markets. You're dealing with perceptions of clients. Those are shifting and the markets are shifting. And now he talks about, as we're recording this, we're probably going into a recession. So that's going to have an effect on some kind of a business. So if you put in a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, guess what? That plan goes out the window. Yeah. So it's really important to start looking to be able to tack. And a lot of times when I do one-on-one with my coaching students, full day, some of them come in and say, listen, I want to do a 5-year plan. Okay, well, that's nice. But you got to look at the smaller kind of a thing to be able to tack, like he was describing in this particular podcast.
And I think he talked about having the end in mind and having a vision for what you want for your business to look like. But what I took from that is like being flexible with how you get there. Yeah. And kind of having some wiggle room in how you approach your business. And so like not being ironclad bound to a certain way of doing things, that could stagnate your growth instead of give you what you really want.
Yeah. And the thing is, with most entrepreneurs, when they're starting up, one of the most common thing that I see with those people, and they're asking, how do I get there? How? And they're constantly just looking for their own, how they know to do the how. And the examples that we used on this particular podcast, like the UGG example, right? We used the...
did you say UGG or UGG? What would you say, right?
The boots, the shoes, UGGs. Yeah. Okay, UGGs. Transcripts on the back table. All right. But if you look at that, that guy pivoted, right?
Yeah.
He, the example that you used with the guy with the glasses and all those kinds of things.
Right.
But if you are getting so stuck in the how that you only know, it's going to be a long and hard road to be able to get there, I think.
Well, man, and I think it's, he didn't say this explicitly, but what I imagine is it's a combination of resourcefulness and awareness. of opportunity that really make a business owner successful. And when that's combined with your personal passion, especially, that's when the dynamite is like really, that's the magic sauce. So like, for instance, you see an opportunity for something that's not there, and that something there's a demand for it. There's a need for it. People will pay for it, right? Not just say they'd buy it, right? You're gonna pay for it. And then when you combine that with something you're passionate about, it's almost like you can spawn a new business. Like, so for instance, he mentioned, toilet paper is a funny example, but like then, hey, if you're really passionate about the environment, biodegradability, maybe you make toilet paper that's edible to animals or something. Like, who knows? Like, right, you're passionate about feeding bears. Like, you could totally create a new product. Again, you have to have the filter of it. It's gonna be profitable for you. But that's, I think, with that intersection, that merger is such a powerful concept to master and a mindset to embrace.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we didn't mention, I think is part of this equation is letting go of your ego. Because I think a lot of investors, entrepreneurs, when they fall, is because their ego was so big that this is not the right way. And they're not open to pivoting, or they're not open to tacking because of the fact that, the ego is taking over kind of a thing. So I think that's an important aspect.
Yeah.
Another takeaway that I had from this call, which I didn't realize until today, was that you both have a wife and a husband. So I'm just no, but on the serious side of things,
you're my work husband, and then I have a real wife.
That's right, you're my work wife, and I do actually. So that means I have two wives, and you have husband and a wife. All right. So which one's working better, the wife or the husband for you?
All right, neither.
Don't say it, because you might get in trouble.
I know. So edit this out. Whoever's editing this.
Exactly. So no, but here's one of the takeaways that I gotten out of this too is this overnight success thing, because this happens in our industry, in the real estate industry, especially in the real estate. Everybody seems to be an overnight success kind of a thing, right?
Right.
And they'll put out these cars or these big houses, and but then nobody ever talks about the 10 years that took that guy to try and error and fail and move forward and trying something new that actually gets him to that quote unquote overnight success. I'm glad that he brought it up.
Dude, and that's so true. And I know many people have heard that before, and they've seen the iceberg and like, hey, here's what you see. And then under the water is all the effort, failure, toil, sweat, blood, tears, all that kind of stuff. But if you take away the clichéness of it, it's true. It is true. Like, so, he mentioned Eddie Van Halen. Well, how do you get to play guitar like Eddie Van Halen? You play guitar for 12 hours a day for 20 years, or 10 years or whatever. And you gotta, if that's what you want, that's amazing. And I think the only way you'll do that is if you love it. Like, if you don't love it, it's going to be horrible. Like, don't try to do something that you don't like. That's not in alignment with who you are as a person and what your interests are. You got to find that intersection, and that's the best way to be successful.
I totally agree with that, because a lot of times the students come to my calls, and one of the things that they're not doing in their business, guess what? That's most of the times the things that they hate doing. Like, I just had a conversation that I need to do my accounting with one of my students, accounting for taxes they haven't done. Wonder why they don't like doing it. Give it to somebody else to do it kind of stuff. So
totally
the passion, the love for it, I think is a big factor in order for you to be successful in life. What you do and what I do, dude, I love what I do. Dude, it's like, to me, it's not
I have to
work.
pinch myself every day that I get to do this.
Yeah, it shows.
Like, this is amazing. Like, it is. Can you believe that we get to do this? That we talk to all these awesome people, and we get to speak all over the country and share this awesome message and keep people transform their lives and business. It's amazing. Dude, one other thing I really liked you said is prove it. You think you're close, prove it. And that, I think, is a real accentuation of like how important it is to know where you are in your business, know the flocks of your sheep, know your metrics, like show me the progress you've made. Why do you feel like this is, substantiate it. I feel like that was really cool too.
Right. Because most of the time I'm almost there. It's just the feeling kind of a thing.
Yeah. It's totally subjective. Like there's no, dude, how about talking about your spouse being in your business?
Well, so hold on,
dude. Right now, there's a couple out there somewhere right now looking at each other, hearing our words, and they're giving each other the evil eye, and maybe some elbows are involved as well.
Yeah. So hopefully we didn't completely screw up that business relationship kind of a thing. But, but listen, I mean, that is a really important thing because it's a completely different dynamic.
It is.
You know what I mean? I think, he mentioned that, somebody's got to be a final decision maker and those kinds of things. But I think what also needs to happen is like when you move as a couple, like a married couple, and you go into a business, I think there's got to be a separation of we're not really married in this particular time. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because if we come into this space, husband and wife, and we're trying to run this business, I think that might be some power struggles and things like that in there. And there's got to be some separation, mental separation there, I think.
And we've we know some couples in Lifeonaire that have done this very successfully. So it's definitely not something that is impossible, but it has to be approached very deliberately and carefully and set up the right way, or it could lead to conflict. And so, there's ways you can do it and knock it out of the park. And there's ways that are almost guaranteed to fail. And so you got to know how to do that. And I get the appeal of it. Like if you really enjoy being around your spouse, it'd be fun to go in business together and experience the challenges together and do all this greatness together. But like, there's some things you gotta be aware of.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, man. Awesome episode. Do you have anything else?
No, his last name is awesome. Michalowicz all the way. Bring it on. You're still trying to figure out how to say that name, but hey, one day maybe.
Well, listen, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe. Also, come on over to Facebook. We have a private Facebook group that is growing very quickly, and awesome discussions are going on in there every day. I'm in there. Peter's in there. Steve Cook, the founder of Lifeonaire, is in there. We got all these awesome people in there that are just there to help you, to share what they're doing, to help you reach what your vision and do all the things you want to do. So until next week, hopefully see you in there. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next episode. Everybody take care.